I know what you guys are thinking, and no, it is not deja vu. This time, I've got the Modern Frontiersman on my channel, and we're going to jump into, and I'm going to grill him on his life, basically, just because I'm a weirdo, I guess. So, before we even get started, thank you, Josh, with the Modern Frontiersman, for jumping on and coming back and letting me do it this time. Welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I haven't done a whole lot of interviews like this, so I'm always willing to talk to all the fellow homies, all the fellow YouTubers, out there do stuff like this. I'm down.
Hell yeah. So, guys, do me a quick favor, hit that like. Make sure you hit that subscribe button while you're down there. Turn it from red to gray. Also, while you're down there in the description, I'm going to leave a link to Josh's channel, The Modern Frontiersman. I'll also link it up above. He's got some really good content out there. Um, it's kind of like the grunt's perspective, but for the modern frontiersman, he goes way deeper than just being a grunt. And we got to do a chat with him previously a couple weeks ago. We were fortunate enough to get him to come back on the channel with us. Really appreciate you having us here. Like we were saying before we hit the record button, back in the day, um, the stereotypical old man or being a man meant you either started grilling meat or you got into World War II or Vietnam or you did both. Kind of did that to begin with, but for guys in our generation, it's kind of like Iraq and Afghanistan and shit like that. It's no secret. I've said it many times on my channel. I never went and did that stuff, but you did, and you actually went to Ramadi, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yes, I was in the Second Battle of Ramadi in 2006.
In 2006. So my best friend was in Jalua in 2005 driving an Abrams for about 16 months. He got extended from 12 or 15 to 16 or something like that in the cavalry. And he said that there wasn't a day that went by that they didn't hit at least 3 shots on their tank. And then you were in like what I would consider to be one of the more extreme areas.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, between Ramadi and Fallujah were pretty bad at the time. Yeah, it's probably the some of the most dangerous places in the world.
So I know we talked about it last time when I was on your channel. Maybe not in the video, but afterwards when we were talking after the record, we were talking about how I wanted to talk to you about your experiences in Ramadi and your time in the service, and get you back on here so we could continue this conversation, but from another aspect. Just because I'm a nerd and I like to know these things, and so I'm looking forward to getting your perspective on it. Uh,
Yeah, I
so
look
if
forward
we
to sharing that stuff
could,
because nobody's ever nobody's ever actually interviewed me uh, on my time in Iraq. It's been on the YouTube channel and stuff like that, but never on actual combat, on actual, that whole deal.
well, so what I would like to do first is if I remember correctly, you were in the Marine Corps. So tell me what sent you to the Marines, what your experience was going through basic, or what it, tell me how it was joining the Marines. Let's start out with that.
Okay, yeah. So, I from the time I was young, I always wanted to be in the military. I don't know why. It's just something I always wanted to do. Um, when I was younger, I know like my dad had friends that were in the first Gulf War. I was born in 1986, by the way. I need to throw that out there. So my dad had friends that were in the first Gulf War, and it always kind of interested me. I was always interested, in that war and in Iraq and the Middle East because of that, which is, it's kind of funny because I didn't know, like 19, when I'm like 19 years old, I would end up in that very place. But I always wanted to go in the military. just something I always knew I was going to do. Typical boy out in the woods, playing Army Man. Had all the little green Army men, playing paintball and watching all the war movies. And I was like, I'm going to do that one day. Uh, I had this idea in my head that, I guess you say like Lieutenant Dan, that I was going to go off and die in war, but that didn't happen, fortunately. But yeah, when I was in high school, I guess when I was in like ninth grade, the high school library had a book on every branch of the military. I didn't know what branch I wanted to go in. I just knew I wanted to be in the military. So every week I would check out. So like on Monday, I would check out all the books. Not really Coast Guard. I wasn't too interested in that, but I would check out Army, Marines, Navy, and Air Force. And I would read all 4 of those little books. They weren't big books, just like little informational deals. And then at the end of the week, I'd turn them in. Monday, I'd go check them out again. I did that like the entire time I was in high school and just kept going through it over and over and over again, trying to decide what I wanted to do. The Marine Corps always stood out to me. I liked the idea of, what the Marine Corps is all about, sort of the tip of the spear type of deal. Amphibious, kind of specializing in amphibious assault. I kind of look at the Marine Corps as like, sort of like, you could say almost like the Vikings of our time, you know what I mean? Like storming the beaches, and the whole point of the Marine Corps, the whole mission of the Marine Corps is, it's all set up for invasion, for amphibious invasion. And the fact that the Marine Corps was, had the longest basic training, the prestige that the Marine Corps has. Yeah, and I'd be lying if I didn't say the same thing like other people say, something about the uniforms. You see those recruiters in the dress blues, and they looked the most crisp and the most sharp and the most disciplined to me. So, and then everything I looked at in those books and from watching videos, I went and talked to the recruiter, and I'd made up my mind. I talked to Army recruiter a little bit too, but to be quite honest, and this ain't nothing against nobody. This is just my opinion at the time. It's probably just that recruiter. They didn't impress me. The Marine Corps recruiter did. Simple as that. Yeah, I joined the delayed entry program in my whole senior year. I was going through the delayed entry program, doing PT, learning Marine Corps history. They get you ready for basic trainings, kind of already go ahead and start the indoctrination process in a way. Get you kind of up to speed, go ahead and learn the things that you're going to have to learn in boot camp. Because what a lot of people don't know is that Marine Corps boot camp is a lot more indoctrination than it is actual combat training. There's very little combat training in Marine Corps boot camp. It's all, for lack of a better term, brainwashing. It's indoctrination. It's getting you, familiar with Marine Corps customs and courtesies, and that discipline carrying you down and rebuilding you as a Marine, and they do a good job at indoctrination. It's like I heard this really, I saw this little funny meme. I think it was a joke, but there's some truth to it. I think it said like the Air Force is there's only one branch of the military. As I said, and that's the Army. The Air Force is a corporation, and I think it's like the Marine Corps is a cult. Yeah, and the Army and the Navy are the only 2 branches of the military. That's really true. The Marine Corps is very cult-like, if you will. It's very, it's different. It's different from the other branches. It's hard to explain really, but there's a different mindset in the Marine Corps that you don't really see, that I didn't really see in other branches. And that drew me in, that really did. So like, I think it was 2 days after high school graduation, I went to Paris Island. So I didn't have a whole lot of time, to do my own thing. I got out of high school, my mom had me a little going away party, had a few friends over. We grilled out, and a day later I was down in MEPS in Montgomery, Alabama, and went off to Paris Island, South Carolina, and started boot camp. Like I said, it's not a lot of combat training like people think. All that stuff comes later. There's a lot of repeating things over and over, drill instructors yelling, asking you questions, you repeating like Marine Corps history, different battles, different customs courtesies, reciting ranks, all that kind of stuff. a lot of PT, a lot of running. That's what I always tell people. Like, people come to me and they say, "Hey, my son's going in the Marines. He's lifting weights. You know, what else should he do?" I always say, "Tell him to just stop lifting weights. Just run until he pukes. You know, just run, 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 run. You know, it's get as much cardio as you can, because Marine Corps likes Marines to be kind of lean and mean. You know, like it's really big on endurance and stuff. I mean, strength's important, but you know, they want you to be able to go, 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 go. So a lot of running. You don't really walk slowly anywhere. A lot of drill, a lot of marching, a lot of PT, and a lot of reciting knowledge. And then all that combat training comes later. Whether so, like if you're infantry, like I was given the option, you have to like choose. Your recruiter will tell you to choose 3 things that you might want to do. All I want to do is infantry. You know I wanted a combat MOS. All I wanted to do is be a rifleman. So I was like, I just want infantry. He's like, okay, what about your other 2 choices? I was like, infantry. That's it. You know, so he's like, no, you got to pick some other ones. So I was like, okay, well, tanker and a forward observer. You know, so I still stuck with those, you know, grunt like or combat MOSs. But you know, you're not gonna say infantry and then not get it. So yeah, I did get it. So January, February, March. I went to boot camp in March 2005. Yeah, March 2005. Graduated. You know, Marine Corps boot camp is 3 months. It's the longest boot camp. It's the longest basic training in the military. And then I think came home on leave for like a week, and then went to Camp Geiger, North Carolina, which is actually like a little offshoot of New River Air Station, which is kind of a satellite of Camp Lejeune. That's just right across the river from Camp Lejeune. And I went there to School of Infantry, Infantry Training Battalion. And that's where you start doing more combat training. If you're not infantry, you first go to MCT, which is Marine Combat Training, which I worked there for a little while after my deployment to Ramadi, but that's, you know, towards the end of this story. But yeah, if you're not infantry, you go there for for a short amount of time for very like basic combat training, and then they go to their regular MOS schools after that. But if you're infantry, you go to the School of Infantry, you go to the Infantry Training Battalion, you do all that combat training, you do the, you know, like all the individual movement techniques, how to move, how to, you know, shoot, move, and communicate, how to do all that stuff on a basic level, you know. And I think it's another 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 months. I can't remember for sure. That was a long time ago. But yeah, it's about as long as boot camp. And then you just go straight to your unit. So I think it was about fall at this time. I remember it was cooling down a little bit. Went over to Camp Lejeune, got on 7 tons. They just trucked us over there with all of our gear and dropped us off. And I went to 3rd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, India Company. So I was in 3/8 India. And they had already started workup for deployment to Iraq when we got there. So, you know, we find out when we get there that, hey, we're being deployed like in a few months, you know. So I mean, it was like boom, 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 boot camp, infantry training, to your unit on the workup and deploy. There was no time in deployment. So a lot of mount train, a lot of CQB type, or, you know, like in cities and stuff, clearing houses, setting up houses, like setting up rooms with tape, and, you know, just practicing footwork and how we move as a team and everything through these houses and stuff. Going to these mount towns that are set up, you know, with, you know, like insurgents in there fighting against us, like an opposition force, with SIM rounds, with, you know, with basically like paintball for your M16. We were carrying M16 A4s. A lot of people think at that time everybody's rolling with the M4s, but we were not. It was, you know, full length rifles, M16 A4, fixed stocks, quad rail, all that. So back then, you know, they don't do it anymore. So we did all of our training with iron sights and everything, and we didn't get ACOGs until we got to Iraq. So we didn't even train with that stuff, which was kind of odd, because, you know, then we got the side plates in our on our flak jackets. And we called them flak jackets back then. I never heard the term plate carrier until after I got out of the Marine Corps. We just always called them flak jackets. And helmets, well, let's call them Kevlar. Now, you say Kevlar, people are like, okay, what that's made out of Kevlar? Well, if a Marine ever referred to Kevlar back then, they were talking about their helmet. It's weird how terminology changes over time, and from in the Marine Corps world to throughout the branches, and then into the civilian world, things are called or the words are used differently. But yeah, a lot of the terms that we use, like on our channels and stuff like that, is not actually. I wouldn't have known what you were talking about, back then when I was actually in. I wouldn't have known what I'm talking about now because we didn't talk like that. But yeah, we had the old school flak jackets. They just split down the middle. Like what do they? I can't remember what. This is a Point Blank. I think that made them. They just got the Velcro down the middle. They didn't go over your head. I actually prefer those still to this day because you don't got to like squeeze them over your head or nothing. You just throw them on like a vest and Velcro it up, and you're ready to go. It's a lot faster to get on. But they're a little bit more bulky and cumbersome.
I think the civilians still run. Like I know my nephew is a Leo, and his plate carrier is kind of like the vest where puts a flap over and then it velcros and then it flaps over and velcros back, and that's what he runs. And
Yeah,
actually, we had when I was a kid, we had sold our farm in Florida, and then we ended up going back and repossessing it because they quit paying or whatever. And the guy was in the military or something, and he had a couple like semi trucks there with a lot of milsurp stuff, and I ended up with an old flak jacket from like Vietnam era. I wish I still had that thing, but that was pretty cool. So I kind of know what you're talking about. I've always just seen them as plate
yeah, they're
carriers. That's just I'm a civilian, so
Yeah, they're very similar to the ones from Vietnam. Yeah, they're damn near the same. Like when I looked them up, I never knew what they were called, and I kept looking them up the other day trying to find one. And when I found them, I was I'm not buying them because they're ridiculously expensive. Uh, but uh, uh, but yeah, uh, but yeah, we were rocking some old school kind of stuff. The Army had that's after I got there that I realized this, but yeah, we did training for. See, Marine Corps has to do. I think it's like a minimum of 6 months for a workup. We didn't get the full 6 months, so then we knew we were going to Iraq, but we didn't know where. So not long before we deployed, we had a little meeting. The whole battalion was in there in this room. It was hot. Everybody's crammed in there, and in our CP, and they got up, and it was kind of a weird feeling because it's kind of an ominous sort of vibe in the room. Everybody's real quiet, wondering, hey, where are we going? And they were like, "Hey, gents, it's like we're going to Ramadi," and I didn't know anything about it at the time, but all the guys who had deployed before were kind of like, "Fuck," you see people sit back and putting their heads back, and people holding their heads like, this sucks, because some of them were in Fallujah, the first battle during Fallujah and everything, and so they knew all about it. So I'm looking around like, what's the big deal? And they were like, "Hey, this is one of the worst AOs in the country, blah 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 blah, going through us. We got a quick rundown of Arab culture, of simple Arabic words that we need to be listening for, a very basic rundown of Islam. As a matter of fact, this is my notebook that I carried, that I had at the time, my Write in the Rain notebook, and I still have all those notes right here from that very meeting where I wrote down everything that we learned about, that we were told about Arab culture, about Ramadi, and all that stuff. I still have all that right here, and I keep it with me because I have a lot of notes in here from in Iraq and from training and stuff that are still valuable to reference back to. But yeah, so we just had a month or two left to go. We went home on leave so we could visit our families and everything, and we were think it was January, the end of January 2006. Uh, we hopped on the bus and went to the airport and took off. We flew to, I think we stopped in Ireland, and then we landed in Kuwait, uh, and then took a bus from Kuwait to, from the airport in Kuwait to, was it Camp Liberty, I believe it is, in Kuwait. And then we hopped on helicopters and started our flights into Iraq, and we flew straight into Ramadi.
So it sounds like you went in just like boom, 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 nonstop with the training. Um, what was your
Yeah.
mindset while you were going through that training up to finding out that you were going to Ramadi?
Um, Trying to think, let's say that was a while back, but I just, I didn't really know what to think. I mean, when you're a 19-year-old kid right out of high school, well, 18 at that time, uh, you don't really know much about the world. So I had all these ideas, I guess, in my head from movies, what war was going to be like, what to expect and all that, that there's these defined lines, of, they're the good guy, or we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. That's their lines. This is our lines. I kind of just had these notions in my head that, and that bubble was bursted pretty quick once I got there. But um, I wasn't too fond of. I'll be honest. I'm not going to call anybody out here. I'm not going to say anybody's names, but a lot of leadership I wasn't thrilled with. I kind of started to question things like, like it's like, oh my gosh, did I make the right decision? Because I kind of started to see that there's some kind of people that were clearly might have been picked on in high school that were trying to, pay back the world for how they were treated before, in high school and stuff is what, the only thing I could gather from it. But there were clearly some leadership issues, and it really started to make me wonder if I had made a bad decision. But a lot of the hazing and stuff that goes on, a lot of old school Marines and stuff would be like, "Oh, that's just part of it. I got hazed, so you should get hazed too." But a lot of it's stupid, and it doesn't do any good. It doesn't build a good team, and it makes you just hate the people. You know what I mean? Like my fire team at first, I was, it all moved around once we got to Iraq, but I was not too thrilled about deploying with some of the guys I was with because I didn't trust them. Because the way they treated all of us boots, us new Marines, they're called boots because you're right out of boot camp. It really wasn't cool, and I was, sort of, feeling like this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. This wasn't this brotherhood that I was expecting at first. That was my initial impressions before actually deploying.
So you're fresh off the bus and then off the plane and then off the helicopter, and you find out you're going into Ramadi. How old are you? You're like 19, 20. How old are you? And what are your thoughts going into Ramadi?
I was 19, so got out of boot camp. My birthday was at that December. Turned 19 like the month before we deployed. So we chilled out at Camp Liberty for a while. I think it was a few days, maybe a day or two, maybe, and then we hopped on those helicopters. I remember, flying. Couldn't really see anything. You're always flying at night, of course, so you don't get blasted out of the sky. But I guess we were flying over open desert because I don't remember seeing anything for some of the flight. And then we got to the city. You could see the helicopters kind of come down a little bit and start seeing the lights of the city. And for people that don't know, like, Iraq is not these little, all of Iraq is not these little huts, like people think. It's not this little, like, third world country with people living in a bunch of huts, like people imagine the Middle East to be. There's big cities, this was a developed nation. So we see all the lights from the city, you see fires burning in the streets, smoke everywhere, and tracers start flying up at the helicopters. helicopters. Like that was my very first taste of Ramadi. We hadn't even touched the ground yet, and and it's nighttime, and the gunners on the helicopters start lighting up the rooftops. And I remember my squad leader. He leans over and he yells something at me, and I was like, what, Corporal? And he pats me on my Kevlar and says, "Congratulations, you're a combat veteran." And I'm thinking we haven't even touched the ground yet. Like this is not going to be good. So my initial impressions were, oh my gosh, what have I done?
So you're
I'm
taking
thinking like
rounds. You
I'm a
haven't even
19-year-old
landed
kid. And I'm about
yet.
to die.
I can't even. I can't even imagine what that feeling would be like. So you're 19 years old. You haven't even landed in Ramadi yet. You're already taking rounds. What rank are you, and what's your job, and how are you feeling the first, day or two into Ramadi?
I was private first class, so PFC. Um, we landed in Camp Ramadi, and that day, I mean, I don't remember wasting no time. We got off the helicopters, settled in for a little while. I think it was a couple hours, maybe, if I remember correctly. It's like some of this stuff could be a little off because that was a long time ago, uh, but then I remember going to the gate, and we were waiting on trucks to show up, waiting on Humvees to show up to pick us up because we weren't staying on Camp Ramadi. We were going across the Euphrates to Camp Blue Diamond. Camp Ramadi sits here, and then on the other side of the Euphrates is Camp Blue Diamond. They're both right on the river, right next to each other. So we were going to Camp Blue Diamond, and we were sitting there at the gate, and it's just like these HESCO barriers down this long dirt, sand road, and then we see the gates at the very end. They're like, okay, chill out. So just sitting there, like sitting on the ground, sitting against our packs, got our Kevlar flak jacket, everything on, ready for the trucks to get there. And I'm looking at that gate, like thinking, hear machine gun fire off in the distance, sound like just a couple blocks away. Hear 50 cals shooting, hear the AKs rattling. This big boom, everything kind of shakes. See this big black mushroom cloud come up, like I say, just a couple blocks down the road. I'm just sitting there like, okay, like, we're about to go out this gate into absolute hell. And we haven't even got to our base, to the base that we're going to yet. So I think this was like morning time, that next morning after we landed. But the trucks show up, and fire team leader is like, hey, it's like, we could, take fire just going right down the road. This place isn't good. So, just he's like, forget your training, do whatever comes natural. That's the only way you're going to survive. Don't spend too much time thinking about training. Just do whatever comes natural to do. And I was like, Roger that. So we hop in the trucks and we go down the road. Hear some fire going down the road, but nothing really happened. Nothing happened. We got to Camp Blue Diamond. Get on there. On Camp Blue Diamond, and we didn't go out the wire for a while. I guess it was a week or two because you spend some time just kind of getting acclimatized. It's a lot different environment. The heat's different. The air is different. So you spend time just kind of getting used to that before going out on any patrols or anything. So we were brought to our barracks. It was I believe it was one of Saddam's nephew's palace. The Iraqi army stayed in the palace. We stayed in one of like the guard huts. So we settled in there, found our rooms. Each like fire team had each their rooms and stuff for each squad, and went to the chow hall. Just kind of hung out for a while, and just got used to the environment. That was like the first week or two, like I said.
You're a young private first class in this hellhole known as Ramadi. You've been hanging out for a week or two, getting acclimated to what can only be considered as Satan's taint of a temperature of a hellhole. And you finally get sent out, past the wire, what, not counting, landing in on the helicopter, the first time you got shot at, describe that scenario to me.
Well, the first encounter was not being shot at; it was IEDs. But actually, it was our very first mission I ever went on. So I actually shared this on my members section, and I've never shared any of these stories publicly. So just a few months ago, so you're on here is going to be the first time anybody's heard these stories on YouTube, other than my channel members. But very first
Exclusive,
mission,
guys. You heard it
we went
here.
out at night. Yeah, that's right. So we did a little handover with the unit that was there before us. I don't remember what unit it was. I'll keep wanting to say 19, but I don't think that's who it was. But we they look like shit. They look like Walking Dead, And we asked, we were told, hey, go talk to them, see what they got to say. So they were like, hey, just don't go out during the day. Go out at night. And they were like, okay, well, like, no, seriously, don't go out in the fucking daytime. They were adamant about that. Like, snipers are terrible in the city. IEDs are terrible. You'll just go out at night. So the first mission we went on was at night. It wasn't real late. I want to say it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Most of the time after that, we went out super like early, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or midnight or so, if I'm not mistaken. But I remember we left the wire. We sit there, kind of let our eyes adjust to the dark. We weren't wearing our MVGs. We had them on us, but there's street lights and stuff. Like it's not like pitch black. So sitting there and got all of our stuff set up and all of our gears situated, and we go out the gate. The army opens the gate. We go out. We ran most of the missions in Ramadi. The army stayed back and stood post and guarded the base. And they opened the gate. We go out. We cross the bridge, cross the Euphrates, hit MSR, Michigan, the main service route there, I believe. And then I didn't know what we were doing. I don't know exactly. I don't remember what the actual objective was. I think it might have just been like a presence patrol, just showing our presence and like, hey, we're here. Because that was done a lot, just to kind of keep insurgents and ISIS, in check, and just reminding them that we're here, that we're there. I don't remember if that's what that was, but I remember we turned. The flaps were down on the side of the 7-ton, so nobody could see in. So snipers couldn't see in from the rooftops to hit us, to get accurate fire on individual Marines. So the flaps were down. We couldn't see. I could see like through a little crack, and I'd see the street lights going by. And I remember the 7-ton start to slow down a little bit, and I hear little kids like yelling, people yelling on the side of the road, and then hear like, it sounds like rocks hitting. I think it was rocks hitting the truck when we went through this one neighborhood. It sounded like people were throwing stuff at the trucks. And I got really nervous, I was like, oh gosh, like that. I started thinking like the Black Hawk Down, that movie and everything. And, all these thoughts started going through my head, like, oh, they're going to kill us and they're going to parade us through the streets and stuff, And so I remember we started hitting wires and I see sparks flying outside. And I realized that the power was kind of crappy in Ramadi because of the fighting. And people just had wires running around, running power back and forth and stuff. And we were hitting them, I think. And so suddenly the trucks come to a stop. And we get out. Hey, everybody get out. And we jump out. One of the 7-tons is stuck in the sewage in the streets because the sewage is leaking. From bombs and IEDs going off, sewage leaks into the streets. So truck's stuck. So we run into a house. It was at the end of the street, big house. This is my first encounter with Iraqi people. So we run through this gate into the house, and the kids were sitting there playing Nintendo. I think they were playing Mario. So this is a huge house, big chandelier, stairs going up each side in the foyer, like really, really super nice house. So that instantly shattered my ideas of what Iraq was and what Iraqis were. I was like, wow, some of these are some really wealthy, intelligent people and stuff. And so I think the dad was like some sort of scientist or something, and the mom was like a doctor, and they had a bunch of kids. And they were sitting there, and I know one of the Navy corpsmen had said something about keeping candy in his pockets to give to the kids and stuff. So I did that. So I gave some candy to all the kids, and I sit there and kind of played with the kids for a little while. The interpreter and our platoon commander talked with the family. I guess we were waiting for somebody to come get the truck unstuck. So they were like, "Hey, let's get back out." They got the truck out. So I walk out the front door, and as soon as I walk out into the little, so all the houses in Iraq, if you're standing in the street, you just see a solid like concrete walls down each side of the street, and there's a gate that goes into each house, like into the front yard or whatever. So I walk out of the front door of this house into the little yard, the gate's closed and everything. And as soon as I step down off of the porch onto the ground, boom! I didn't know, just this huge explosion. All the power shuts out down like in the area. The windows blow out of the house. I'm on the ground. My ears are ringing. And I looking around. I'm down. I didn't know what, it's like everybody just kind of, didn't know what happened. And I remember our company gunnery sergeant was with us, and he come up behind me, big, humongous black guy. And he grabs me by the back. He grabs me by my carry handle and picks me up off the ground, like with one arm, and stands me up. And he's like, "You okay, Marine?" I was like, "Yes, Gunny, thank you." And so he pats me on the back, and I'm like, trying to, mess with my ears, get my hearing back. And he's checking everybody, make sure everybody's good. And he's like, "All right, let's get over to the wall." So somebody comes with like a breaching kit, and it's got like a ladder in it, a little small ladder. So we threw it over one of the side walls. We didn't want to go out into the wall, into the street where we just came from, when this blast had just went off. And I'm the first person over the wall. My very first deployment, 19-year-old kid, and I go over the wall first. It's like, great. So I climb over the wall. I'm into the street, and there's a hole where that 7-ton was sitting. There's a hole big enough you could have fit the entire 7-ton, fit that entire truck inside of it. So like they had some kind of shell buried there or something. So it was a humongous hole in the street, exactly where we were stuck. So we were really blessed. Not lucky. We were blessed that day to us all to not be dead, because it would have completely destroyed that truck for sure and killed every single one of us. But I get out and I run to the other side of the street up against the wall at this corner. And I got my rifle pointed down the street. Say all the lights had gone off, but there was some on still down the street, so I could still see like each little the opening to each alleyway and the intersections and stuff. And this is kind of like this is a decent neighborhood looking, like it's like a suburban type neighborhood, It's not like a total shithole, but there's a dude, like I'm sitting there, everybody else is coming over the wall. And I'm looking down the street, and I see this little light beeping laying on the ground, and I was like, "What is that?" So I'm looking through my ACOG, and I see this little flashing light on the ground. I guess about maybe 30, 40, maybe 30 to 50 yards away, I guess. And I'm looking at it, and this dude pops his head around now the alleyway and just looking at me. I'm staring at him, and he's staring back at me, and I have my rifle at him, and I was like, "Aguf," which is stop in Arabic, and I didn't want to yell it too loud, but I know he heard me, and he darted back down the alleyway. My platoon sergeant, he comes up, and he's like, "Hey, Fortner, let's go. Your point." And I was like, "Hold on, Staff Sergeant." I was like, I told him, I was like, "Hey." So I showed him where that light was on the ground and pointed it out to him, kind of guided his eyes, gave him directions where it was at. He saw it, and I was like, and there's a dude that come around that alleyway, popped out of that alleyway, acting kind of like he wanted us to follow him. He was like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Good eye, what I mean? I'm glad, that was good paying attention to detail like that. So who knows, that could have been another IED, and he was waiting to blast it when we went after him, and hit us again with a secondary attack. So it's possible that me noticing that, saved everybody, once again. So I think we went a different route, and that's all I remember from that patrol. I don't remember what else happened that night, but nothing major. So that was my first taste of Ramadi.
So, yeah, that sounds super fun.
Mm-hmm.
What was a normal day like? And I throw quotations up. What was a normal day like for you going through Ramadi?
Like, but like just a normal day in general, or like a normal day like out of the wire.
Uh, Out of the wire. What was a normal day on patrol out of the wire like?
Uh, well, most of the time we were, chilling back on base, waiting for a new mission. But when we did go outside the wire, you could pretty much guarantee you were gonna, and if you were out for any length of time, you can guarantee you're gonna take fire for sure. Uh, like I say, a lot of times we take sniper fire. It might be pop shots here and there, but a lot of times they wouldn't stand and fight. One of the Iraqi soldiers actually told me one time uh, that the insurgents were afraid of Marines, and this is not bravado. This is not bullshit. I'm just saying, for anybody that's listening, I'm telling you just what the Iraqi soldiers would tell me, that the insurgents, that Al Qaeda, that in Iraq, the insurgency, everybody was afraid of Marines, that they would attack a army convoy before they would attack a Marine convoy, because they didn't want to stand and fight Marines. So a lot of times we might get some RPG fire, get a few rounds here and there, just pow, 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 and then we start firing back, and they're gone. Sometimes, not all the time, but that was typical. Just kind of some pop shots here and there from random places, and a lot of times you had no idea where it was coming from, because it's 360 degrees. Come from any rooftop, any window. It could be 15 stories up. It could be from the ground level. You half the time you had no idea where it was coming from and who it was. So sometimes, like with sniper fire, if you knew about what building it was coming from, sometimes the only thing to do is you pop smoke, take cover, and light the building up. That's about all. All you could do. You couldn't really ever see where it was coming from for the most part. Sniper's really bad in their body.
So Tyler Gray was a Delta Force operator, and I'll try to link it. There, he was on a two-part episode on the Sean Ryan show. He helped with the Navy SEAL or SEAL Team 6 or something TV show. Anyways, he said that out of all the branches of the military, obviously he's in the Army, the ones who were like, went through the most shit with the least amount of shit, like pretty much like we're the black sheep of the military, the low man on the totem pole, like who can put up with the most amount of shit with the least amount of shit was the Marines. And he was talking about his observation of when he was going through Fallujah. What was one of the worst situations that you can remember being in outside of the wire as one of those Marines who's forced to go through the shit to prove how tough y'all are with the least amount of shit without tactically acquiring it from your Army buddies?
Yeah, the worst day I can remember, um, which is it's funny because I'm actually working on some paperwork for the VA, and I've been talking to people about this day, making sure I have my memory straight, because I'm currently fighting the VA for PTSD. compensation and stuff. But this was the first thing I thought of. The first instance that I thought of to claim PTSD on was, and this is just one instance, but we were out on patrols. This was before we had stopped going out during the day, and I was point man. I was point man a lot, which at the time I always thought was fucked up because it's like my first deployment. Why the fuck am I point man? But so
Yeah, I can
the
imagine.
guys in the trucks, they drop us off. They drop us off, and we go into this house. I kick open the door. We go through. Usually, the first thing we do, clear the house, and then go straight to the rooftops and start setting up. Start setting up on the roofs to watch over the streets and stuff. Make sure nobody comes in on us. So, we clear the house. I'm going up the stairs. My squad leader's already up there, and he's standing. We hear this boom down the street. This boom. The house shakes. A few blocks, I guess 5 blocks away or so, and he's standing at the top of the stairs, and I'm coming up the stairs, and he's just staring off in the distance. He's like, "Hey, get up here with the radio now." I also had the radio on my back, and I see this cloud coming at this smoke coming down the street from where the trucks went after they dropped us off. That's still our platoon. Just part of us are mounted, and the other part are on foot. So I get up there, see this smoke. He hops on the radio. If I'm not mistaken, nobody answered. And we hear machine gun fire. They're getting lit up. So he's like, hey, we got to get to them now. So we run downstairs. I run outside the house, and he's like, hey, man, go, run. And so I'm running. It is crazy, too, because with all that weight and running like 5 blocks, like you'd think you'd be winded, but I guess adrenaline pumping and everything. It's like I don't remember even getting tired. But we got to this. I got to where I could see them, and so it's like, if I remember correctly, it's like this big open, like a roundabout. This big intersection. There's like a roundabout, and one of the Humvees. The front of it's gone, like it's completely missing. The front tires are gone, the hood's off. It's just destroyed. It's it's sitting nose down in the street, and turrets are turning around looking at the rooftops, and they're taking machine gun fire. And I didn't want to run out in the open, through this open like roundabout to this little like courtyard deal. So I stopped and suggested that we go down an alleyway or something and come around up behind them or beside them. And so I turned to kick open the door, and I kick open the door of the house to go out the back door around the back of these buildings into the alleyway. And it was kind of weird because the inside of this house was destroyed. I don't know why, but it was just like rubble inside the house. And there was a dude standing there with a freaking axe. Like he was about to chop me up with this axe, and dude in my fire team pops through the other door, and the dude takes off running. And so we didn't follow, because you never want to follow anybody, in a situation like that, because they'll lead you into an ambush or something. And so we turn right back around and go back out the front door, and he was like, my squad leader was like, just go, just run. And I was like, so I take a deep breath, and I just take off running across this open courtyard towards the trucks, just right out in the open. I did not want to do that. And that's probably the fastest
What
I've
are you
ever
carrying?
run.
What's your primary?
And my M16. I'm just carrying my rifle, yeah. And so I get to the middle of this open area, and there's a car sitting on the left, and there's some Iraqis laying there dead. I believe they had on like chest rigs. Their AKs are laying next to them. I run like almost over top of them. I look down, and that's my first, really glimpse of, dead bodies laying there like that. And they were ripped up from machine gun fire. The car was full of holes, and it was nasty. It was, it was gross. It was disturbing scene to see people tore up by a 240 or by a 50 cal. And I remember my thoughts, and this might sound odd to some people, but I can honestly tell you that my thoughts at that moment when I looked at this dead dude in the face, this dead Iraqi, was, what about? Wonder what was his thought process? You know, all this stuff went through my head in like a matter of a half a second. But uh, what's he fighting for? You know, like where's his children? Where's his family? That they're now without a dad and without a all that human stuff started to rush through my head. And I kept on running. That was all. You wouldn't understand how somebody could think that in an environment, but you know what I'm talking about. It's like a split second thing that went through my head. And so we get to the trucks, and uh, one of the other dudes in my platoon was like pulling the driver out. Basically the whole steering column, everything. He fell down and crushed his leg almost off, and with blood everywhere. He's trying to get him out. He's got blood splattered on his face, so he's a pretty small guy. So I grab him. We pull him in the house, and they're getting the dude out of the truck, with his legs damn near crushed to the bone. And I light a cigarette, like I'm going to right now. I light a cigarette, and I stick it in his mouth. He's sitting there shaking, like he's just like in a daze. I stick the cigarette in his mouth. He was in that truck. He was passenger. He was like the navigator or whatever. He was the lead in that truck. And if I'm not mistaken, so he's just sitting there on the stairs of this house. We go in, clear the house. He sits down, and I stick the cigarette in his mouth. I smoke one, and he's sitting there just shaking and smoking this cigarette. And I give him my canteen, get him drink some water. They called, so they there was another company, I think, in the AO at the time, so they stopped by to help us. They come and picked us up. Our trucks couldn't make it back yet for some reason. The rest of them, I don't remember. I don't know why, but they came through. I want to say Harriers came. I believe it was Harriers come down, and they dropped smoke in the streets for us. Popped some flares over top of the buildings as a show of force. All the fire stops at that point. When they show up, nobody wants to fight anymore. But so the streets are filled with smoke. All the fire stops. We hop in all these vehicles. I'm going from vehicle to vehicle, all the vehicles are full. So finally, like the last Humvee, I'm like the only one left standing in the street. And I open up the door. They were like, "Hey, we're full too, man." I was like, "Fuck you are." And I jump in, and I like lay in their laps and close the door. And we went back. We went to Camp Ramadi, kind of regroup and gather ourselves, and everybody was pretty quiet. I remember we got back to Camp Blue Diamond the way back. Nobody said a word. We didn't know if their buddy was okay, with his legs jacked up. And we go to the chow hall. They tried to not let us in because we were dirty. The army guy guarding the chow hall told us we couldn't come in because our uniforms were too fucking dirty. And our squad leader stopped that real quick. He realized he was about to get his ass stomped if he didn't get out of the way and let us in. So he moved, and we went in. We sat down and ate. Nobody said a word. Went outside. Everybody smoked a cigarette. And I remember that day, my hand started shaking. I noticed it. Somebody noticed it when I was smoking, and I had a little jitter after that day. But he was good. He went off, and he got his legs fixed. They took skin grafts, and he was there when we got back from Ramadi waiting on us in civvies and civilian clothes and with a cane or on crutches or something. But I just found out a few weeks ago when I started asking some fellow members of our company, of India company, about that day, making sure I had the story straight. I found out that he died later on from infection, and I didn't know that. And I just found that out a few weeks ago.
Damn, that's rough, man. That's a hell of an
Yeah,
experience. So, how
yeah,
long was your overall tour in Iraq? Not counting just going
6
to
months.
Ramadi. How many times did you go over? 6 months?
Yeah, I only went on one deployment, and that's because I was supposed to go on another one, but that's later on in my life in the Marine Corps what happened with that. But yeah, Marines only stay on deployments for 6 months. They don't do a year like the Army. Um, and if I'm not mistaken, there has to be another 6 months in between deployments. And I think that's to try to keep Marines from going crazy because whether they like it, whether anybody likes hearing this or not, from what I saw in Ramadi, and from what I know to be fact in Fallujah, and it just could be because of those AOs were Marine AOs. Marines were in charge of the worst areas in Ramadi, and I think that's for a reason. And that, like I say, not bravado and stuff, just from my observations, but that you know, Marines are deep in the shit a lot of times, and I think they do that. Limit those deployment times to keep people from losing their freaking minds.
So 6 months deployed. How many missions did you run? Doesn't have to be guesstimated. How many missions do you think you ran in Ramadi over 6 months?
Oh man, I really have no clue. I don't even know what to guess. To be honest with you, uh, I did spend a month
Like, were
working
you
with the
going
army.
out of the
Like they had to
wire
send.
every day? Were you going out of there once a week or
Yeah, I'd say I think it was maybe like once a week because a lot of the times what we would do is it would be like a 24-hour patrol type deal. That's most of the time we went out. It was other than when we would go out to. Well, I take that back because we spend a lot of time out at FOBs, out at forward operating bases as well, which was just about as dangerous sometimes as being out on patrols. Uh, but on actual patrols in the streets, yeah, it was about I'd say once a week or so, and it was usually for about 24 hours. Uh, yeah, we'd go out and usually what we would do is we'd go out, we'd pick a house. If there was nothing specific to do, if there wasn't like a raid or something we needed to go on, we would go basically pick a house, bust holes in the rooftops, like in the so we could see out and shoot through, like not the rooftops, but like the ledges around the roof. Uh, we had like a pickaxe in the breaching kit. Get up there, bust holes in the walls with a sledgehammer with that pick, and sit there and just look out these little peepholes and watch the streets and kind of observe, just kind of do recon uh, for 24 hours. We just take like one MRE, uh, you know, sneak in there at night, watch over the streets, and like leave the next night in darkness. We did a lot of about halfway through the deployment, we did a lot of sneaking around. Realized that I almost got shot by a sniper once. From us going out during the day. We always took a lot of fire and took a lot of IEDs, during the daytime. So we did a lot of sneaking around at night. I guess the last half. But then, like I say, we spent a lot of time at every other week. It was our turn. Each platoon would rotate and go out and stay at a FOB at a forward operating base out in the city. We built one actually near the hospital in Ramadi. It was taken back from insurgents. We took it back and then set up a forward operating base, like an OP, excuse me, not a FOB, but an OP. Uh, we spent a lot of time at OPs. So we set up this OP at about a block down from the hospital. That was a pretty hot area, if I remember correctly. We spent a lot of time at OP Haria, which was Haria. Haria means, I think it means actually like freedom in Arabic. But it was like right smack dab in the middle of Ramadi, next to like the government center, kind of like where the governor and stuff stay, where the mayor and stuff of Ramadi stays. And that place, we took fire from there a lot. There's videos on YouTube actually. I've shared on my channel before. There's videos of us fighting from that OP. There's video of me blasting out, shooting out the windows at this big like skyscraper type building that we didn't like very much. Uh, yeah, a lot of time was spent at
to
OPs
get
like
you to
that, just
send
watching the
me those
streets, staying
links
hope.
so I can overlay it?
Yeah, I'll do that. But yeah, if we weren't out on patrols, going on raids, or just doing like we do a lot of census operations where we'd actually just go out and do census, like see who's living in houses. Sometimes we'd get intelligence. We'd go out and hunt down bomb makers and people, that were found out to have made the bombs that had hit us before and stuff like that. But if there wasn't anything specific to do like that, we'd be chilling out at OPs, and sometimes we would run missions out of the OPs.
So, out of your time, the 6 months that you were deployed, um, you did like at least 24 missions, probably. What is the one,
Oh yeah.
the story that is the most memorable or sticks out to you the most? What is the thing that you're hoping that I would ask, but I haven't yet that you want to talk about? What mission? What thing is it that you want to touch on? What's the most memorable for you of being in Ramadi?
Um, there's one in particular, and it may not seem like a big deal to some people, but it really kind of messed with my head, and it really made me think a lot. Uh, it was one of the early missions we went on. It was the daytime. We went out, and I was pointing ahead, of course, uh, and we were going down the street, turned around this corner, and I remember my goggles. We had this big old goggles. You see people wearing them on top of their helmet. We had these big goggles. They're supposed to be
Yep.
fog proof and everything. They're not. Screw those things. They started fogging up on me, and so a lot of times I didn't even wear eye protection. Oh no, you got to wear your eye and ear protection. We didn't wear eye or ear protection. Because one, you got to hear. Two, you got to see. So that stuff would always fog up. They were all scratched up from banging up against walls and squeezing in alleyways and all these little holes we had to go through in tight spaces in these streets. So I took them off and I never wore them again. But when I got them off and got cleared up, I heard this snap and it come from down the street, and I think it hit. I think it hit the ground next to me. Uh, and I looked from side to side, seeing if there was a door or a gate open. And the squad leader's like, "Kick open that fucking gate." And I turned to the left. I kicked the gate in, and I'm raising my rifle up, and my foot's pushing the gate open, and I see something move on the other side, and it's a little kid, maybe 2, 3, like a little toddler just learning to walk, and my foot grazes his face, and I accidentally, kind of half-ass kick this kid in the face. Um, and his mom runs up. He's in a diaper, and running around barefooted, in the yard. And his mom runs up, and she snatches him up and looks at me, and she's shaking. And people could see this is kind of an uneventful story, but it's something like I said stood out in my mind for a long time. And this look on her face, the way she was looking at me was, and I remember this being like one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Her face is like, imprinted into my brain. But this absolute look of terror on her face when she saw me, um, and I remember thinking, and I kept apologizing. I was like, Asif, saying I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kick the kid. I was like, why did we choose boy? Why did Asif? And she said, okay, like she was trying to calm herself down. And so we cleared the house and everything. I think they asked where her husband was. He was at work or whatever. So we kind of just took cover in her house for a little bit. And I don't remember where we went from there, but I just remember thinking, sitting there, I talked to this woman for a little while we were there, and then I played with the kid and everything. And after the thing kind of calmed down for a second, and I remember thinking to myself, like being a 19-year-old kid, nobody's ever looked at me with, absolute fear in their eyes like that before. And it was really, that was one of my, the first few encounters with Iraqi people too. And, she's a real nice woman, I started kind of realizing like hey, these people are just people, like we wouldn't be too fond of foreign boots on our soil. We wouldn't like that either. People were busting into our houses. We wouldn't be too fond of that. It's not to say whether we should have been there or not. It's just just an observation, and I started to kind of realize that our perception of these people maybe is not what people what it may be a little off.
So you're 17 years post Ramadi 6 months deployment. How do you feel different now about that 6 months than you did before you went? How are you feeling now versus then? Like, taking into consideration that we were in Afghanistan for 20 years, and due to the current administration, we had a horrible pullout. We proved that America's pullout game was weak as fuck, right? There was the explosion that killed like 13 service members. All the things considered, 20 years of fighting, 6 months, at least 24 missions outside of the wire. In retrospect, how do you feel about Ramadi? How do you feel about the whole thing in general? Like, compared to what you felt going in, how do you feel now?
Well, I'm going to. I might get some hate for answering this question, and I don't care because I'm going to tell the truth about my feelings about that. Because everybody's got their own opinion, But mine was. I started to really question everything, to be honest, while we were about halfway through that deployment, or maybe 75% of the way. Towards the end, I started to kind of wonder, what the fuck are we doing here? Because the Iraqi army, the ones that were the police sucked. Like half of them were freaking insurgents themselves. But the army guys that we worked with, they were pretty cool. And I spent a lot of time with the Iraqi army, learned a lot of Arabic, learned a lot about Islam. I took that opportunity to learn as much about, another culture and another people as I could. I was like, I'm not going to waste this time and just like hate these people like some other people are doing. I'm gonna use this time to learn about another people and make it beneficial and a good learning experience. And so I became friends with a lot of them, and they didn't want us there. Like they were like, hey, we're friends, but you shouldn't be here. Like, this is our country. Let us fix our problem. And so and I couldn't blame them for feeling that way. A lot of times we kick in doors, and the people there would be like, "Hey, America's good." I said, "But you're not welcome here. We don't want you here. Blowing up our streets and stuff. We just want people. We want this war to be over with." And I wondered too how many insurgents were not even related to terrorist organizations. They just didn't want us in their country, and that's understandable. Because people had mixed feelings about Saddam too. Like some people would say, Saddam was terrible. We're glad y'all are here. We're glad he's gone. And some people would say, we'd rather have Saddam in power than have all this fighting going on, and our cities are blown to shit now. So some people hated us just because of the damage. Because cities like Ramadi and Fallujah were booming beforehand. And I was looking up the other day where Ramadi is now like it's rebuilt. It's a very modern city. Everything looks good there now, and I'd like to go back and visit if I knew if it was safe enough to do so. But I'd do it. But I look back now, and I remember being out on patrol one time, and I was thinking about all this stuff. I was watching people walk around the streets, just playing with their kids. Seeing kids on crutches with their legs missing and stuff like that. And I was just sitting there looking around thinking about my siblings. I had little siblings at the time that were really young and thinking about them and how I would feel, if this were the other way around and stuff like that. So, I come down and I asked my squad leader one time, it's like, hey, Corporal, is like, what the fuck are we doing here? He's like, what do you mean? We're setting up an OP in this house watching the streets. I was like, I know. And I mean, like, why are we in this country? Like that, nobody found any weapons of mass destruction. Those, like what is going on? Like, what are we really doing? And he's like, it doesn't matter. You're a Marine. Just do your job. Uh, yeah, but that really wasn't enough to me. Like, if I'm going to be shooting at people and people are going to be trying to kill me, I want to know why. I want to know that it's for a good damn reason. And I'm not sure to this day that it was, to be honest. ISIS come back through and took over. Could have saw that coming. I'd been saying for a long time that the same thing was going to happen in Afghanistan. Like, as soon as we leave, the Taliban's going to take back over. Nobody's ever conquered Afghanistan. Russians couldn't do it. We can't do it. Nobody's ever done it. So, unfortunately, I don't know that it was all for, the reasons that were given. I'm not going to get into all the conspiracy theories
Yeah,
of what it, what it could have been and this and this and that. People say oil and this and that. I don't know, but I just don't know that it was. I don't know it's for the reasons people think it was.
I understand. I wasn't expecting you to get into the political aspect of it or the conspiracy theories. It's definitely uh, due to my best friend being in Iraq, actually being in Jalua in '05, and then Baghdad in 2010. Um, and then watching our pullout game crumble and all that shit happening, and watching just all the political bullshit that went along with it, the Obama uh, drone program, all that. I'm not trying to make this a political conversation, but I understand where you're at. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine what that was like. Um, I'm gonna
there's always
try to
politics
start
involved
wrapping
in
this
war.
up here, but oh yeah, that's like the only way for politicians to make money is to do some sort of bullshit politically within the United States and then get on that war train. I mean, just look at Hillary and the whole Clinton and Biden family syndicate and what they've made off of it. Uh, Again, we're not trying to get into the
Yeah,
politics of this into this conversation. We're just really talking about Josh's experience in Ramadi. Uh, so we're going to leave the rest of that for later on. We hope to have Josh back because I have some more questions for you. Maybe not related to Ramadi, but tactics, Minuteman,
yeah,
uh, preparedness, food, stuff like that. I maybe get you in on another conversation like this, or like a round table conversation with you and a couple of other people. I hope to be doing conversations like this with some other people. I got a couple of people lined up. We've been doing the chat conversations. I'd like to do this stuff too because I think it's important to get an understanding of what some of the people like Josh went through in the name of, and how dare I throw up parentheses, protecting our freedoms while going through this controversial, war zone. We're not going to get it again. We're not getting into that. I'm not trying to get into the minutia of the politics, but I really appreciate you coming on here and spending the last hour plus talking about your experiences. Uh, you really just helped me nerd out, is what you were doing. I hope you don't mind me using you for selfish gains.
No, absolutely not. I want to share those stories anyway, and I kind of want to know. I want people to know like the kind of environment I come from, so you can understand. We didn't get too much into tactics and how we did stuff, but when we do, then people will understand. Even like from my perspective, like on my channel, why I say certain things that I say, based on the experiences that I've had in combat when it comes to Minuteman and type of, SHTF type stuff.
I guess, is there anything else that you want to talk about your time in Ramadi, uh, or is there more stuff that you would like us to go to the members or your Patreon to find out some more stuff? I don't want you to give away all the stuff you've been giving out on Patreon or your membership channel. And also, I need to go quit being a slacker and a poor and jump over and jump onto your membership thing because I like supporting my buddies and learning more stuff like this and nerding out. So, uh, is there anything else you want to share, or should we jump over there so you get a little something out of this too?
No, I am going over there. I will be sharing every single story that I can think of on my member section and Patreon. If you want to go join there, and I'm not doing that publicly, all of them, and some of it's not because of just for money purposes, but it's kind of to. So I'm going to say some things that I just don't want to be public, and but I will be. Not only will I be sharing those stories, I'll be sharing what I learned, the lesson learned from those stories that could possibly be applied to everyday life or to SHTF, prepared citizen type of scenarios. So I want to make these. I want to share the stories, but then tell you what you can learn. What I learned from it and what I can teach you. From those stories to keep in mind in a Mad Max world, because people say, well, this won't be the same war you were fighting in Iraq. No, but people are people. People react in very similar ways no matter where you're at in the world. People are people, and a lot of those lessons could be applied.
All right, guys. So, do me one more favor if you've got the opportunity. Jump over to the Modern Frontiersmen. Again, it was linked up here earlier. There will be a link in the description. You go to his channel, you'll be able to see the membership stuff. He'll also, I believe, in his About section, there is a link to his Patreon. If not, I'm sure there's a video on his channel that'll show you how to find all that stuff. We don't want him to drag all his stuff out on this channel for free. Let's support my buddy. I really appreciate you coming on here and spending the last hour and a half talking to me about Ramadi. Really, like I said at the beginning, this is me being selfish just to kind of geek out and learn a little bit more firsthand stuff. You need to send me the links to some of the videos of you in Ramadi. I'd like to overlay those in here as well because I think that would be fucking bitching. Um, I hope I want to say I hope you come back. We're going to have you back if I have to twist your arm and beg and plead to get you back. We're going to get you back because there's a couple more things I'd like to talk to you about outside of your military experience. But man, I appreciate you coming on here and spending the last little bit of time explaining all your stuff. I really appreciate that, and thank you for your service and going over there and putting up with all that bullshit for that time that you did, anyways.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on. I'm willing to talk anytime you want. I'll come on here every day if you want me to. Yeah, I'll come. I'll come back for sure. You ain't got to beg.
All right. So, all right, guys. So, we're going to hold him to that. He is going to come back on this channel. We're going to talk about some more stuff. Hopefully, we'll be able to do like a round table thing and we can get a couple of people on here and talk about some stuff. Hopefully, I'll be able to jump back in on his channel again. That was totally fun. He kicked this whole thing off, inviting me onto his channel. So, this is his fault if he didn't like this video. Let us know in the comments either way if you liked it or not. Don't really care because I was going to be doing this anyways. I've been wanting to talk to you for a year now. So I'm glad that we got to have this opportunity. Stick around after we cut because I want to talk to you for a little bit without this on and shit. But all right, guys. Let us know down in the comments what you thought about it. Let us know if there was any questions that I should have asked that I didn't get to. Maybe we'll get to do a follow-up video to this where we get to ask your questions and find out some things that we didn't go over. Make sure you go and check Josh's channel out, The Modern Frontiersman. He also has an Etsy shop. I'll try to link that and do the description thing as well, where he does a lot of leather work that is pretty bitchin'. I just happen to run a German piece of fine engineering, and it's not a revolver and stuff. I probably could get one of those too, but we're going to get him back to talk about his leather work. We're going to get him back to talk about rigs. To get him back to talk about gardening because people want to focus all their energy and time on rigs and weapons and they don't think about water and food. So we want to get them back to talk about that as well. We just can't thank you enough for being on the channel, brother. Really appreciate it. Guys, until next time, we cannot say this enough. Make sure you get all your shit together so when the time comes to get ready, you aren't being frantic getting all your shit together. We're going to go ahead and kill this here. Thank you, Josh. Once again, thank you guys for coming back. Until next time.
Stay self-reliant.
Yes, sir.